Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today. We rely on apps for, well, absolutely everything nowadays, right? From ordering our morning coffee to managing our life savings. But have you ever stopped and wondered how the folks who build these apps actually keep your personal information out of the hands of hackers? Well, today, we are demystifying app safety. We're going to peek right behind the curtain and look at exactly how developers protect your data. And the best part? We are going to do it completely jargon-free. So, zero computer science degree required.
Okay, let's jump right into this with a question we've all probably asked after scrolling through the morning news. Why do our favorite apps get hacked? It's a completely relatable fear. I mean, we hand over our credit card numbers, our home addresses, our private messages, and then, bam, a massive data breach. Now, you might be thinking it's because hackers are just these unstoppable geniuses typing away in dark rooms with glowing green screens. But actually, the truth is often much simpler and honestly a whole lot more surprising.
Believe it or not, the culprit behind a ton of hacked apps boils down to just three little words: make it secure. It sounds like a pretty solid instruction, right? But here's the thing. In the software engineering world, this is literally the most useless requirement you could possibly give a developer. Think about it like cooking. If you tell a chef to make it tasty, what does that actually mean? A bunch of salt? Extra sugar? Telling a developer to make it secure leaves them totally guessing. Against what exact threats? Up to what standard? It's this incredibly vague instruction that just leaves giant, gaping holes in your app's armor.
Section 1. Features versus safety rules. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we can look at this just like building a house. On one hand, our functional requirement is the front door. The system must log users in. That just tells the system what it needs to do. But on the other hand, our security requirement is the deadbolt. The system must lock out after 5 failed tries. That tells the system exactly how to protect the user while it's doing its job. You see, you can't just build the door. You absolutely have to explicitly build the lock, too.
And this is where we really have to have a little empathy for our software developers. They're incredibly smart people, but they aren't mind readers. And honestly, most of them aren't specialized security experts either. If the instructions just say, build a login page, well, one developer might think to add a deadbolt, but another might just leave the door wide open. Without explicit, crystal-clear safety rules, security just becomes an option. It becomes this thing you do if you have spare time. And in the fast-paced tech world, you never have spare time. Safety has to be non-negotiable.
Section 2. Finding the right rules. So where do these rules come from? Well, just like construction workers follow city building codes, developers actually have their own global safety checklist. It's called the OWASP Application Security Verification Standard. Yeah, kind of a clunky name, I know. But you can really just think of it as a ready-made framework that hands development teams the exact tested security rules they need to follow. It completely takes the guesswork out of the equation. Developers don't have to sit around wondering what secure means anymore. They literally just open the checklist.
But of course, not every app is a high-security vault. I mean, you wouldn't put a massive bank vault door on a flimsy garden shed, right? So this checklist is brilliantly designed with 3 different levels of rigor. Level 1 is for basic apps. Basically, every single app out there should at least be doing this. Then, Level 2 is for apps handling sensitive data, where you definitely need more robust standards. And finally, Level 3. That's for critical systems, like your healthcare portal or your online banking, which require the absolute most advanced controls available. Inside this checklist, there are specific categories for every single part of an app, and you'll probably recognize a lot of these everyday terms. We're talking rules for logins and multi-factor authentication, rules for encryption, which ensures your data is all scrambled up as it travels across the internet. There are even rules for error logging, so if something does go wrong, the security team can instantly see exactly what happened. There is quite literally a rulebook for every little corner of your favorite app. And this brilliantly illustrates how our everyday fears get translated right into hard code. Teams use a process called threat modeling, which is basically just a fancy way of asking, okay, what are we actually worried about here? If the fear is an attacker stealing your password and pretending to be you, the developer rule becomes require multi-factor authentication. If the threat is your private info leaking into an error log, the rule is redact personal info before saving logs. Every single fear generates an exact, traceable safety rule.
Section 3. Good rules versus bad rules.
All right, let's look at a classic example of this in action. The bad rule says the app must be secure. We already know that means absolutely nothing. But the good rule says all database queries must use parameterized statements. Now, I know that sounds a little technical,
But it basically just means the developer has to use a strict fill-in-the-blank form when they're talking to the database. This physically prevents hackers from sneaking any malicious commands into the system. It gives the developer an exact, actionable coding instruction. Now, here is one you will definitely relate to. The bad rule. Users need strong passwords. Well, what is strong? To my grandma, it's her cat's name with the number 1 at the end. The good rule is minimum 12 characters, mixing uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols, exactly matching federal guidelines. So the next time you get totally frustrated because an app just won't accept your password, try to remember they aren't trying to annoy you. A developer is just following a very good, very specific safety rule to protect your account.
So the crucial point is that a perfect rule leaves absolutely no room for interpretation. It really comes down to 4 key traits. It is specific, it is measurable, it is testable, meaning a computer can automatically check if it's working, and lastly, it has clear ownership, meaning someone is specifically responsible for it. When a rule has these 4 traits, safety completely stops being a guessing game and becomes a totally reliable guarantee.
Section 4. Everyday App Safety Habits. So how does this actually get built into the daily routine? It happens in a really simple repeating loop. Step 1. Write the rule. For example, write limit logins to 5 per minute. That stops hackers from just guessing thousands of passwords. Step 2. Write the code. The developer literally adds a counter to the app's memory. Step 3, and honestly, this is the magic part. Automate the test. A computer pretends to log in 6 times really fast. If the app blocks that 6th try, it passes. This automated test runs every single day, meaning the requirement becomes verifiable security. Now, in highly regulated industries, like banking or healthcare, teams actually have to prove that they did all of this. They use something called a requirements traceability matrix. I know, it's a total mouthful, but it's basically just a giant safety receipt. It maps every single safety rule to the exact code that was built and the exact test that proved it works. So when auditors come knocking, the developers just hand them this receipt to prove without a doubt that they did exactly what they promised.
The absolute biggest takeaway from all of this is a fundamental shift in mindset. Because in the best software teams, security is not an afterthought. It's not some separate checklist you scramble to do at the very end, right before launching. Security is simply part of what the word done means. If a feature isn't secure, the feature isn't finished, period.
I really hope this explainer has changed the way you look at the technology sitting in your pocket. Because behind every simple login screen, behind every digital shopping cart, there is this massive, invisible architecture of highly specific, totally automated rules working around the clock to keep your life secure. So the next time you open your favorite app, ask yourself, what invisible rules are protecting your data right now? Thank you so much for joining me, and stay curious.